Good morning and welcome to the Planning Hearing Officer meetings for November 19th, 2014. My name is Laura Stotler and I'll be serving today as the Planning Hearing Officer. We have 3 cases and relevant exhibits are posted on the panels located directly behind me. The agenda, staff reports, and recommendations for each of today's cases can be found on the city's website. We also have a copy by the front door. A copy of the hearing procedures are available on the counter by the door next to the agendas, and copies of the reports are also available. Today, our cases include a variance, a parking reduction permit, and administrative use permit related to alcohol. For a variance under the provisions of Title 30, Chapter 30.43 of the Glendale Municipal Code, a variance shall be granted if 4 required findings are present. Those findings are, you can find them in our municipal code. We also have alcohol permits. Alcohol permits are subject to special findings as well. Those are also found in the municipal code. If the evidence presented in the application at today's hearings meets the criteria, then the planning hearing officer can either approve or impose conditions for the approval on the case in question. If the findings of fact are not evident, then the request will be denied. Notification of this public hearing was accomplished by the use of public notices, which were mailed to property owners and occupants located within 500 feet of the subject properties. There was a notice physically posted on the site in question, and a notice was also placed in the local newspaper and posted on the city's website. Hearings will proceed as follows. I'll read a description of the requested entitlements. Then the case planner will make a brief overview of the case, give an analysis, and provide a recommendation. Then the applicant will ask to come forward, stating both name and address, and will be asked to present a case within a 15-minute time limit. Others in support of or in opposition to the application and any other interested parties will then be asked to come forward, stating both name and address, and they will have a 3-minute time limit. Lastly, the applicant will be given the opportunity to make closing comments, if desired, in response to any testimonies that have been given by preceding speakers. And for rebuttal, they will be given a 5-minute time limit. The hearing will be closed and the case will then be taken under submission. After the hearing, the decision will be prepared in writing and will be in the form of a letter sent to the applicants and to all persons who responded to the public notice, either by speaking here today at this hearing or if somebody has submitted a written comment and also provided their name and address. The date of the decision will be the date appearing on the letter. However, if a decision is made at this hearing, the decision date will be today's date, and a 15-day appeal period, and those will be calendar days, would start today. Under the appeals provision of Title 30, Chapter 30.62 of the Glendale Municipal Code, any decision may be appealed to the Planning Commission within 15 days of the date of the decision. Anyone wishing to appeal may obtain forms and brochures on the procedures for appeal from the Permit Services Center located in room 101 of this building. If you wish to speak today, please write your name and address on one of the speaker's forms, which have been provided by the front door and submitted to our planning assistants. These are the green forms, if you haven't already seen these. I would also like to inform everyone that the official proceedings of the hearing are being recorded as part of the public record. So for the first case today, we have variance case number PVAR 1421886. It's located at 414 North Central Avenue. The applicant is John Harrington for Citibank, and the case planner is Roger Kiesel. And I would like to have a staff report from Roger Kiesel, please.
All right, good morning. The applicant is requesting to construct 2 drive-through lanes for the associated on-site Citibank retail branch located at 414 North Central Avenue. These proposed drive-throughs would have a vehicle waiting lane of 60 feet instead of the required minimum length of 100 feet. The existing bank currently has drive-throughs located on an adjacent site to the south. These will be removed due to a recently approved mixed-use development. Once the new development is constructed, it's planned that the existing Citibank retail branch will relocate to the new development, and the new development is accommodating drive-throughs for that bank branch. The city's regulations regarding drive-through lanes were designed really with fast food restaurants in mind. The typical fast food drive-through contains sort of the menu sign area where you order the food. and then window or windows where you pay for the food and for the delivery of food. And at each of those points, delays can occur in the transaction between the customer and the fast food restaurant employee. Thus, in our zoning code, we have requirements for overall length of drive-throughs as well as the minimum lane distance between the start of the drive-through and the first delay point, the ordering device. In the present situation, there really is only one potential for customer delay, which is at the ATM machine. Once the transaction at the ATM is complete, in this case, the customer either makes a U-turn on site and exits on Central Avenue or continues north to exit the site on Milford Street. The proposed drive-through lanes to the ATM are 60 feet in length, which is consistent with the minimum length that the zoning code requires between the start of the lane and the ordering device. The subject site is currently developed with a Citibank retail bank. The city's drive-through regulations are geared toward fast food restaurants, which typically have 2 to 3 bottleneck points, which I just described. The exceptional circumstance in this case is that while drive-through requirements are designed for fast food restaurants, the proposed drive-through lanes are for an ATM or the on-site bank. The ATM drive-throughs only have one bottleneck point, and the 60-foot length proposed for the drive-through lane is consistent and meets the minimum length that the code requires between the start of the drive-through and the ordering device. The site and surrounding area are zoned for intense mixed-use development. The subject site currently is developed with a retail bank branch, and the associated ATM drive-through lanes for this bank are located on the site immediately south. The proposed ATM drive-through will replace the existing lanes located off-site. And then given the heavy commercial nature of the area, surrounding area, as well as the fact that the drive-through lanes are already in existence, the proposed project will not be detrimental to the public welfare or the surrounding neighborhood. Finally, the objective of requiring minimum overall drive-through length and minimum length between the start of the lane and the ordering device is to minimize traffic congestion and backup onto the public streets, the adjacent public streets. To address this objective, the zoning code requires a minimum of 60 feet between the start of the drive-through lane and any ordering device. As previously mentioned, the drive-through regulations are designed for fast food, most of which only have one drive-through lane. The applicant is proposing 2 drive-through lanes of 60 feet between the start of the lanes and the ATM kiosk. Additionally, the applicant surveyed usage of the existing ATMs for the bank for the previous year. So they did surveys for the off-site ATM drive-throughs. The survey determined that the highest volume of usage was between 3 p.m. and 9 p.m., where an average of 11.3 transactions took place per hour per ATM. Given that each of the proposed drive-through lanes can accommodate 3 vehicles at any one time, it's really unlikely that there's going to be a backup on North Central Avenue due to the location of those ATM kiosks. So staff believes the findings can be made for the variance and recommends approval of the project as conditioned.
Okay. I do have one question, and maybe the applicant can answer this, but what will happen with the drive-through lanes once the new building is constructed and the bank moves into the new building?
There is a condition in the draft approval of the variance that the variance will expire 3 years from the date of this approval or when the relocated Citibank relocates to the northwest corner of North Central Avenue and Lexington Drive.
Okay.
So
Thanks.
if it's still there in 3 years, they'll need to reapply. If it's not there in 3 years, they need to this variance will go away,
Okay.
and either they will remove it of their own, or it will become like a code compliance case.
Okay, thanks. Next, I'd like to call forward the applicant. And I guess I have two applicants, so I'm not sure who's speaking. I have Ann Gray and John Harrington, so together you have 15 minutes.
Oh, okay, great. So I'm Ann Gray, obviously. So the existing branch has been there since 1980, and there's a use pattern by the neighborhood. It's a very, very local branch serving the Glendale area, and the customers are very used to using the ATM. So because of that, the branch feels that they would really like to continue to operate with the ATMs in place. And again, our usage pattern it's not this big rush at mealtime for a hamburger. It's it's distributed throughout the day, and obviously after work is a primary use, but again, it's very low during those hours. So we appreciate your consideration and your recommendation for approval. The condition number 9 that Roger referred to about removal in 3 years, we would like to have you reconsider that. All the other conditions we're totally fine with. But that particular one, because the ATMs are there now, and if we left them there now, we would have them indefinitely. And we're not in control of that development next door. We feel that our intention is when that development's complete, there's obviously the property is sold, there's another developer, that these would be demolished. But since we're not in control of that site and we're not in control of that developer, we would really prefer to have the wording changed to allow us to keep these ATMs until those ATMs come online. And then we're perfectly happy to demolish them, but the 3-year we feel is a bit excessive, given that our current ATMs are kind of entitled forever. Also, I think there's a little bit of an error in the wording on that condition, that it's the northeast corner of Central Avenue in West Lexington, not the northwest corner.
Thank you.
And I'm happy to answer any other questions or provide clarifications.
No, I don't have any other questions. No.
I've got a question. So,
Okay.
Sorry. So your modified language for condition 9, because I've said either 3 years or when the Citibank relocates. And you're fine with when the Citibank relocates.
Absolutely. Yeah.
You're just afraid that it will relocate after the 3 years, or what?
Yeah, I mean, if for any reason the developer of that site, if they can't get financing, or if for some reason they don't go ahead with the project, we're not really in control of that anymore. So we feel like it would be a burden for us because something happened with them. You know what I mean? That we'd like the ATMs to stay in place until that project is complete and they can be relocated.
Okay, and that's, I guess, or when the relocated Citibank opens. Isn't that, I mean, the second part of that condition, isn't that what you're concerned about?
My concern is that this variance shall expire 3 years from the date of approval. I'd like to strike that wording. You could say this variance shall expire when the relocated Citibank relocates.
Okay, all right. If the project that was recently approved doesn't pan out, there are already ATMs located on that site. So
right, but if they what if it doesn't pan out after after the holes dug and those aren't there anymore?
Okay.
You know what I mean? So,
Okay.
so I don't want to get into a situation where those ATMs have been removed,
Okay.
and then we have to remove these in 3 years, and then we have none. I guess is what I'm worried
Okay.
about. Yeah.
All right.
No, I think I understand what
Okay.
your concern is. Yeah, I get it. Okay, I don't have any further questions. Did Mr. Harrington wish to speak?
Oh, I'm okay. I just, if there were additional questions for me, I'd be happy to answer.
No, I don't have any. No, that's it. Okay. I don't have any other cards. Does anybody else in the audience wish to speak on this item? No? Well, I don't see any cards. Therefore, I will take this, and I'm sure you don't. Do you have any other comments you wanted to make, or?
Well,
Just to make sure.
just beyond the
Oh, you need to speak at the microphone.
Oh, I apologize. I'm John Harrington. I actually work for Citibank. Just the reiteration that the 3 years presents a huge risk to us. We are going to demolish the existing ATMs, relocate them to the smaller side, and then relocate them back to the final development if for any reason. I mean, force majeure, earthquake, war, fire. I mean, there's many reasons the 3 years could hurt us.
Okay.
I think the developer has the best will in the world to get this done. They've bought the property. They have received their stage 1, stage 2 entitlement, but the 3 years just presents a risk.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thanks. Seeing no other speakers on this item, I will take this item under consideration, and it is now considered submitted. For our next item, we have parking reduction permit PPRP 1420364, an administrative use permit PAUP 1420359. It's located at 3437 Ocean View Boulevard. Up on the board. This is a request to remodel and add 231 square feet to the ground floor of an existing tavern to convert the upstairs owner's unit to accessory space for a tavern restaurant and to add an outdoor dining waiting area without providing additional parking. A parking reduction permit application has been submitted to allow two one-site code-compliant parking spaces, including one handicap space in the reconfigured rear parking area for the expanded tavern restaurant located at 3437 Ocean View Boulevard. The applicant is also requesting an administrative use permit application for the on-site sales, service, and consumption of alcoholic beverage at the expanded use. So with that, I'd like to ask for a presentation from the case planner.
Yes, good morning. The project located at 3537 Ocean View Boulevard, as you just mentioned, consists of remodeling an existing tavern, which was previously known as the Village Pub, adding approximately 230 square feet on the ground floor, converting the upstairs owner's unit to an ancillary space for the expanded tavern restaurant use. And these ancillary spaces would be things along the lines of ADA handicap accessible restrooms, a scullery, cold storage, an office space for the tavern. And all of this would be done in concurrence with the expansion of the restaurant tavern use, essentially converting the tavern to more of a tavern restaurant with primary food service and alcoholic beverage sales. The existing parking to the rear, which is accessed off the alley, is currently shown or striped with 5 parking spaces. The tavern has been in existence since 1959, and it has had a CUP consistently since 1979, and they have been operating as essentially as a beer and wine tavern, local village pub. The property is located in the C3 zone, which is a commercial service zone. It is located on Ocean View, which cuts into North Verdugo Boulevard. Ocean View and North Verdugo Boulevard at this location have a wide variety of commercial uses. Directly behind the alley is a single-family residential neighborhood known as the Spar Heights neighborhood. So you have commercial uses along the main thoroughfares or the minor arterial streets, And then you have a single-family residential neighborhood directly to the west, known as the Spar Heights neighborhood. The applicant has requested a parking reduction permit to allow for the expanded tavern restaurant without providing the additional parking required for the expansion and the conversion of the upstairs unit. The existing parking lot to the rear with the 5 parking spaces, again, these parking spaces, staff was unable to determine the legal compliance of these 5 parking spaces. There are no building records that show how many parking spaces were constructed. And when this building was actually constructed, in 1939, no parking was required for these proposed uses. So the applicant is, as part of the restaurant remodel, required to bring the parking lot up to code, both in terms of ADA handicap accessible parking as well as the zoning code requirements for parking. Essentially, that would result in 2 parking spaces total within the area that's now currently being used with 5 legal nonconforming spaces. The applicant is also requesting to add an outdoor patio area that would be both for outdoor dining and for a waiting area behind the restaurant, simply because they have additional space and there is no ability to provide any more parking than what is currently provided. The applicant is also will be leasing 4 parking spaces off-site for their employees in the parking lot number 7 within walking distance of the business. The findings that were submitted by staff and findings submitted by the applicant and as noted in the staff report address the issues regarding the parking reduction. The Spar Heights Business District is a pedestrian-oriented neighborhood. The tavern has been in operation since its current location since 1959 and with a CUP since 1979 as a tavern. The majority of the individuals in the surrounding area have been walking to the tavern, and that would include the local businesses on Ocean View and Verdugo, as well as the residents within the single-family residential neighborhood. There is parking on the street currently under a 2-hour time limit, so there is a forced required turnover of parking in the area. There are also public parking lots to the north and also to the south. If you notice the aerial image, there are 13 parking spaces in a reconfigured lot just south of the project site in front of the Berolina's Bakery and the deli as well.
Shriners.
Correct, Shriners. The applicant submitted a parking study, and the parking study map is actually posted behind you. You'll notice the streets surveyed were Ocean View, Verdugo, and two of the cross streets. Based on the study that was conducted over a period of 7 days in July of 2014, almost half of the 174 off-site parking spaces on nearby streets and in the public parking lot were available during the lunch hours, and more than half were available after work hours. And it was noted in the parking study that the majority, or I should say many of the commercial uses on Ocean View and Verdugo are actually closed in the evening hours. So the study appears to show that there is parking available on street and in nearby city parking lots to be provided to meet the parking demand for the expanded restaurant tavern. And also due to the hours of operation for the tavern, which would be during the lunchtime hour crowd, primarily who are going to be walking, versus the evening hours when the other businesses are closed. Obviously, there is less of a conflict or negative impact on the surrounding neighborhood. The traffic engineering section met on several occasions with the applicant and planning staff to discuss this issue. And though there is somewhat of a parking situation in the surrounding neighborhood because of the nearby school and the Spar Heights Adult Community Center, as well as the businesses on site, many of which actually don't have parking on site. It's an older commercial district. They are aware of the requirements by our building code in regards to providing ADA handicap accessible parking, and therefore, resulting in the reconfiguration of the parking space on site, the limited area for any additional parking, as well as the parking study that showed that there is available parking in the evening hours when the parking demand was greatest for the tavern. So they essentially came back with no comment. And again, to speak on the actual interior remodel of the restaurant, the space itself that's being maintained for the eating and the tavern use is essentially going to remain the same. The expansion of the tavern is primarily to add an elevator to the building, to expand the kitchen, and then also that would be on the ground floor, and then to convert the upstairs unit to the scullery, an office space, dry goods storage, the ADA handicap accessible restrooms. So there's not really an expansion of the actual congregation area within the tavern and restaurant. It's more of the ancillary uses that are being constructed to support the expansion. Due to also the fact that the parking study is provided, there is parking on site, or I should say off-site, for the project, and also the location of the actual establishment within the very walkable, pedestrian-oriented Spar Heights district. Staff somewhat concurs with the submitted findings prepared by the applicant in regards to supporting a parking reduction request. Because of the expansion of the business, the restaurant and tavern is required to go through the administrative use permit process. The administrative use permit process essentially can be, and by code, is typically dealt with at the administrative level in-house and can be approved by the director, but because this is in conjunction with the expansion of the tavern and the parking reduction request, the director has then elevated this AUP application to the planning hearing officer level and is requesting that you hear this permit request as well. As noted in the staff report, the tavern has had a conditional use permit since 1979 and has been in operation since 1959 at this location for over 55 years. They are requesting to change the tavern type license, and this should have been clarified in the staff report, but was clarified by the applicant in subsequent emails, that they are going from a type 42 license, which is an ABC license that specifies alcoholic beverage sales in a tavern. But it would limit the availability of minors under the age of 18 from coming inside and other type of criteria set forth by the ABC department in regards to tavern. The applicant will be requesting a type 47, which is an on-site sale of alcoholic beverages at a bona fide eating establishment. So this will be a restaurant with alcohol sales. They are located in an over-concentrated census tract, but again, they are one of 32 existing licenses in the census tract. The police department reviewed the application. They looked through their records for calls of service. There have been no calls of service for the Old Village Pub in the last year. In the last 5 years, there were a few calls for service, but no reports were taken, and there was only one call for service that was legitimately valid, and that was for fraud. It wasn't a crime related due to alcohol consumption on site. Conditions have been added or have been recommended to address any possible noise, loitering, trash, and other impacts resulting from the proximity of the expanded tavern, again, to those existing residences directly behind the alley to the rear. Conditions were also recommended to address any negative impacts associated with the proposed outdoor dining and waiting area. Those type of conditions would be focused or are focused on limiting the hours of operation for that patio area, prohibiting outside speakers, requiring that the fencing around the area be a solid block wall, and that the lighting be regulated, and also mandating that the rear door of the restaurant be closed at all times. And so that would hopefully address any type of noise-related or nuisance-related impacts that the surrounding neighborhood might experience due to alcohol sales in the patio. So again, staff is supporting approval of the administrative use permit. I'd like to go in and discuss a few items, a few letters that were received. There was a subsequent email received from the applicant after the staff report came out, and again, this addressed the upgrade of the ABC license from a Type 42 tavern to a Type 47. It addressed the outdoor patio, requesting that the hours of operation be that the outdoor patio be open till 10 p.m. Sunday through Thursday and 11 p.m. on Friday and Saturday, with 30 additional minutes for individuals to finish their meals. And this is something that staff, in our staff report, is recommending that the outdoor patio be completely closed for patron use by 10 p.m. Sunday through Thursday and 11 p.m. Friday through Saturday. There was a correction in one of the findings that it's a C3 zone, not a CR zone, and that it is in the Spar Heights Business District and located on a minor arterial. Also, the hours of operation for the alcohol sales. The request is being made to have alcohol sales or alcohol consumption be allowed from 9 a.m. to 12 midnight on Sunday through Thursday, and 9 a.m. to 2 a.m. Friday and Saturday. And this would allow for things like Bloody Marys and alcohol sales in conjunction with brunches at an earlier time than 11 o'clock as proposed by the staff in the staff report. Staff also suggested that the hours of operation for alcohol sales be limited to 11 p.m. Sunday through Thursday and 1 p.m. Friday through Saturday. And this is in regards to the neighborhood, because it is a neighborhood bar directly adjacent to single-family residential zones, that at this point in time for this particular administrative use permit application, that the hours of operation be limited, because they are changing operation and expanding it from somewhat of a sleepy neighborhood tavern to a restaurant use with alcohol sales. There was also a request made by the applicant that the 3-year approval recommendation for the AUP, for the administrative use permit, be increased up to 10 years because the previous tavern use had a 10-year CUP limit. Staff should have mentioned and should have clarified in the staff report, I should have mentioned, that the 3 years would be from the final of the building permit or certificate of occupancy, because obviously this particular tavern is going to go through quite a bit of remodeling, and we all know that that takes time in terms of going through the building permit process and the construction and whatnot, so that the 3 years should start actually on the date of certificate of occupancy or the building final, as opposed to 3 years from the approval date of the AUP. But again, this is, I believe that the applicant will be speaking on that in her presentation. Also to note, the applicant is submitting a petition with 103 signatures in support of the parking reduction and the administrative use permit in conjunction with the proposal. Staff received a number of letters. Those are in the case file. One is from the Crescenta Valley Community Association, submitted by Mr. Bill Weisman, who's the steering committee member. The Crescenta Valley Community Association reviewed the application and were generally supportive of it. Supportive of the project, though with 3 conditions: that the patio enclosure be constructed of a solid material, such as masonry, and of sufficient height and thickness to mitigate any noise impact. The second item was that the conditions of approval specified in the staff report be adopted or supported, and that the third item would be that the City of Glendale Fresh Air Ordinance information signage be posted on the back of the building and on the front of the building. So we also received a letter from the Montrose Verdugo City Spar Heights Neighborhood Association from Mr. Grant Michaels, the president. And he, too, is generally supportive, or I should say the Montrose Verdugo City Spar Heights Association is generally supportive of the project. They, too, also had 3 conditions that they are recommending. The first being that the hours of operation for the patio and the tavern be conditioned as in the staff report. The second would that the containment of the noise and the mitigation of disturbances affecting the neighborhoods be addressed as part of the conditions of approval. And 3, that the authorization granted for a period of 3 years to allow for evaluation before considering the expansion of those hours. So, that said, we received a letter from a Mr. Joe Stidick, who is representing the property owners directly across the street at 3430 Ocean View. And this letter is essentially in opposition of the parking reduction of 11 parking spaces, that there are issues with regards to individuals parking in that particular property at 3430 directly across the street that are not permitted, and this is still in violation of any postings and whatnot, so that there is a parking issue in the site. And again, the expansion of the business and consumption of alcohol in such a tight location might not be in the most appropriate location. So that is a letter in opposition. We also received, lastly, 3 letters, one from a Mr. Harmig Sarian from S&S Sarian and Sons, located at 3430 Ocean View. I believe he's one of the tenants in that building, in support of. Mr. Patrick O'Grady, a CPA at 3530 Ocean View, in support of. Jackie Castleman from About Antiques, located at 3533 Ocean View, supportive, and Robert Sauer from Sauer Brothers Plumbing at 3523 Ocean View, in support of. So that concludes staff's presentation. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
The only question thanks for a thorough report. The question I did have, and you answered part of it, that we were going to have, or you're recommending that there be a solid wall, because I know that on some of the exhibits there was some discrepancy. Would that solid wall include a solid fence too, as well? So when you're talking about having the business doors closed, it would not only be the rear door to the business, it would also be the door to the outdoor dining area.
Correct. The original submittal included a wrought iron chain link fence, or a wrought iron, not chain link, a wrought iron fence around the outdoor patio. And in discussion with the applicant and the property or the business owner, we voiced our concerns regarding the adjacency of the single-family and the residential neighborhood, and they actually went ahead and resubmitted plans. And those are the plans directly behind you that show a solid block wall around the perimeter of the outdoor dining / patio area, and a solid wood door as well. And again, as noted in the recommended conditions of approval, that the rear door to the building be closed at all times as well. So there would be no outside additional noise coming in from the tavern restaurant.
And I noticed that area is very dark in the evening. For the lighting in the rear, maybe the applicant can address this. Are we requiring that the lights be lower than the level of the wall, and that they be directed downward, so we don't have hanging lights that basically illuminate the whole neighborhood? That's a concern I have, since this is right in the backyard of homes off of, I think it's Downing. I just want to make sure that we've addressed that.
We pretty much, in condition number 7, had generally addressed any type of disturbing lighting. There was concerns that the lighting adjacent to the rear and for the single-family homes, that it wouldn't disturb the residential neighborhood. Staff did not go into the specifications, but it would be under the jurisdiction and purview of the planning hearing officer to make that determination.
All right. Thanks.
And actually, I should say number 12 is more detailed, that the parking area shall be kept adequately illuminated for security purposes during all hours of operation. Lighting fixtures shall be installed and maintained in the parking lot in those areas where streetlights do not effectively illuminate the premises, and no lighting shall be installed or maintained that shines or reflects onto adjacent properties.
Okay. All right, thanks. I'd like to call forward next the applicant. We have a number of cards on this, so Janelle Williams.
Morning, Ms. Stoller. Janelle Williams Land Use Services, 2418 Honolulu Avenue in Montrose. First off, Velia, thank you so much for your hard work on this project. We've been working with staff for a year now to refine this project, to bring it to a hearing, and we always felt that it was very, very important to have staff recommend approval of our project. So we've been very diligent over the time, working with Velia and working with traffic and transportation, working with building and safety to bring this project to you today. I just, before I start, I just want to give you the originals of the petition and some of the letters.
Okay. Thank you.
And then ask you, do you want me to go through point by point down through the AUP first and then the parking reduction, or how would you like me to tack this?
I think Vilya actually hit all the findings I needed
Really
to hear.
did.
But if you would describe how the tavern is going to change, how it is right now my understanding is it's a bar with full service for alcohol.
Yes.
How would it change as a restaurant? And how do you see the rear patio working? And what are you doing to?
I see really no problem with the rear patio. What we are doing is, again, with a lot of help from staff, we've completely enclosed our patio, and the patio itself will have a door leading to the parking lot. So you have a buffer between the back of the building, then you've got the patio, you've got another door there, then you've got the whole expanse of the parking lot, then you've got an alley with another block wall. So there's plenty of buffer, and then you've got the rear yards of those single-family homes on the other side of the block wall. So there's plenty of space between our patio use and the single-family residential over on Downing. I did submit and I'll give you this as my original.
Thanks.
That shows the patio, the rear of the back of the parking lot near the alley, and then it shows the block wall that neighbors the single-family residential. If you're interested, I can also give you a sample menu. This is the type of food that we're proposing. We're working on the menu for it, and it's going to be.
Okay, thanks.
It'll be a family-friendly establishment, so you can bring children there, and we hope that our residential neighbors do walk over with their families.
So type 47 would only be alcohol service with a meal?
No, meal service has to be offered at all times the restaurant is open.
Sure.
And but there will be a bar in the establishment, but food service is available there too. So in all service areas, food has to be available. And that is exactly what we want. That's what we're proposing. The hours of operation on the back patio, we have no problem with any of those conditions, except that we would like to not seat any new patrons out there beyond 10 o'clock, and then give them give us a half hour to clean out the patio and close it down. We do suggest more reasonable hours of operation. We would like 9 o'clock a.m. to midnight, Sunday through Thursday, not on the patio, and 9 a.m. to 2 a.m. Friday and Saturday. And I'm not saying that we would remain open all of those hours, but under the 47 license, it is permitted, and we're not asking for the full extent of what is permitted. So we think it's reasonable. But those hours of operation will allow us to compete fairly, and it's a very competitive business climate there, and it will also somewhat level the playing field with some of the other establishments in the area. Others open as early as 7 a.m. and close at 2 a.m.
Now, are those establishments, those are ones in the shopping park, or are those ones?
No,
along
on the Spar, we've got La Cabanita opening at 7 a.m. and Basin at 2 a.m. And we would like to do the Sunday brunch as well. As Vili mentioned, we are replacing a Type 42 beer and wine license with a 47. And that authorizes sales, service, and consumption in a bona fide eating establishment. It also allows a patron to purchase an unopened bottle of wine or beer. If they find something that they like in the restaurant, they will be able to purchase a bottle to take home with them. Minors are allowed. And food service, again, is available during all business hours. So at $75,000 is what a Type 47 license is going for right now in the open market. It's a huge investment and a huge expense. And the investment in this whole entire operation is enormous. So we would like to do everything we can to make it what it should be. Which is also why with the 3-year term that is suggested we don't feel is reasonable. Again, we're undertaking major renovations, including structural work and up on the roof, adding a gurney accessible elevator, not just a people mover, but a huge elevator, and upgrading everything. It could be up to a year before we can open. Then about another year, typically, for any restaurant to really hit its stride with the full-scale operation, figuring out the staffing levels, refining the menus and things like that. So our effective term of the AUP would be greatly reduced if we're held to a 3-year. And really, the last one was for 10 years, and it didn't serve food. So we think it's reasonable. And we ask for your consideration. Any questions that you may have? You want me to go through any of the findings?
I think I heard all of the findings,
Okay.
but I am concerned with the lighting in the patio. So how would you be addressing that?
Well, what I could suggest at this point, since we don't have that refinement, at least I don't think so, Bob. We don't have the lighting quite figured out back there, but we could have a condition that the lighting shall be subject to the approval of the director or the hearing officer or building and safety official, whoever you may, however you may wish to condition that.
Okay. And then with shading, because I know you're going to have a back patio and you're going to have the sun shining on the patio the way it's shown. Are you going to have?
No, and I'll tell you.
Are you going to use umbrellas or anything like that, or?
No, and I'll tell you why. One of the proposals we were thinking about in the back was we thought we might be able to do a little herb garden back there. But we did a little study on that, just internal. There's no sun back there. And we went to the local nursery and asked them, could we do an herb garden back there? They said, you don't get any sun. So I don't think we would need any overhead shading.
Okay.
We're not proposing it at this time anyway.
Okay. All right. I don't have any other questions. Anything else you'd like to bring up, or you still have time?
The property owner is here, who is also the operator of this John Spar Tavern, Dave Fink, and he may like to say a few words.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, I have the owner, David Fink. You'd like to come up? Thank you.
Thanks for having me here. First of all, we're foodies, not dive bar people, so I think we're going to change the complexion of the tavern to be something that the community can be much more proud of, both architecturally and substantially more food and the environment that I think neighborhood taverns should have. The Village Pub was principally a blue-collar bar with pool tables and dartboards and beer after work. And I think for its era in that neighborhood, which was significantly more blue-collar in the 50s than it is now, it worked. And as it evolved through time, it became less and less pertinent to that area. And blue-collar people don't buy $700,000 bungalows anymore. So, and that's sort of what the neighborhood has gone into. We've been operating. We actually took ownership of the building on July 24th in 2013. And we made the what turned out to be wise decision to keep the place open while we were going through the permitting process. And we've learned an awful lot about the community. We've talked to literally hundreds and hundreds of people, roam the streets. I took the opportunity to follow Janelle's parking person. What do you call the parking person who walks around and counts empty parking spaces for a week? And observed the parking myself in the area. I think I know where the employees of other businesses park and how the whole thing works, and to see the waiting line outside of La Cabanita at 10 o'clock on Friday night. And we sort of learned about sort of what works in the community and what doesn't in that period of time. And just talking to the people about the anticipation of a new eating establishment, and food is the big deal there. There's no question about it. Shriners closes at 5:30. The bakery serves some lunch, but basically it's La Cabanita that is the only restaurant down sort of on the south end of Ocean View there. So we know that we're going to have a lot of good business in the area of food, where the dive bar pretty much doesn't work anymore. We also knew that we were going to go through a huge change with this building, because it has completely been neglected for a number of years, as has the business. And so part of this parking change and getting the parking lot up to code and getting the business relicensed to be sort of what the community needs today goes along with a building that needs everything. It has had no structural upgrades. We're actually going to have to tear the roof off to put a structural membrane in at that level. We're going to take the floor out between the two levels to put a structural diaphragm at that level, rebuild the front of the building, all new plumbing, all new electrical. So it really is a major project that will revitalize, I think, what's going to be a great little asset in the Spar Heights district. And as far as the patio lighting goes, we're building a 7-foot wall around the entire patio. And I used to work for Disney. I'm thinking what we're going to do is get some scenic painted on the inside of that wall to sort of make the place look bigger. And your little down lights on the inside of the wall sound like a perfect addition to that. So we're all about tastefulness and design. We bought a 1940 Art Deco back bar, the first thing we bought to sort of make a statement of what the interior should look like. Bought 35 sheets of this gorgeous green marble that we're going to use for wainscoting on the inside. So I think it'll be a nice little place and a real asset to the community.
Okay. Right, I don't have any other questions.
Thank you.
Thanks. And I also have a card from the architect. It just says, if architecture questions I don't have any, but if you wish to speak, just raise your hand and I'll call you. Okay, next I have a card from Melinda Clark, followed by Tim McDonnelly, I think it is.
Hi. I'm Melinda Clark, the Executive Director of the Montrose Verdugo City Chamber of Commerce. It's 3516 North Verdugo Road. That's Glendale 91208. And I'm here on behalf of the Chamber of Commerce as well as the Spar Heights Business District Association, both of those BIDs within the city. And I think, as you can see, we have an owner here that's coming in and raising the value of the area, raising, the value of our community, looking into our community, making it a family kind of oriented thing. And so we are in full support of this. And we understand the parking situation in Montrose is extraordinarily different. Our buildings are older. We're squished together. The entire community is like that. So we hope that we can find a way to make it work. And I think we do in Montrose. So I think this is a great addition, and that's the statement that we have. So
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Next, Tim McDonnelly.
Sorry for the handwriting. Tim MacDonald, M-A-C-D-O-N-A-L-D. I own the building on the south side of this location and have since 1968. And I've lived the dream through the tavern since 1968. The high points, the low points, the indifferent points, and what have you. Back in '86, can I show you our building?
Sure. Just be careful, there's a step. And don't touch that, because otherwise you'll
This
lose
is
it.
our building here, and I touched it. Back in '86, in self-defense of the tavern, I built this wing here. There was a State Farm little building out here. And it, in the 60s, everybody smoked, walked out with their beer bottle, parked in my lot, and emptied their ashtrays in my lot. And so I get there every morning, and it wasn't fun. So my concern is I have 7,400 square feet with 21 parking places. That's code and what have you. So I'm going to come back in 6 months and say I want to cantilever 600 more feet and not reduce my parking, because it seems like we're going backwards here. But I was never contacted about this. I did get your notice in the mail. I don't know that Dave and I have ever spoken. I like what he said. I don't have a problem, I don't think. My concerns mainly are, well, one in here where it says this is a statistically high crime area. I take offense to that, because since 1968, we had one outside break-in attempt, and then we had a lovely lady who just left my building after 21 years who treated battered women, whose husband stuck a garden hose in the mail slot. But in almost 46 years, we have never had any crime, period. So I don't know how statistically it gets rated that way, so I'd kind of take offense with that. My concern is, and I actually then, after we did our addition in '86, we put in a gate, the electric gate, because it was ongoing. Since then, of course, that's back in the days when it was stoners and thing La Cabanita, a wonderful family, and we eat there all the time. I've lived here 69 years. I love Montrose, love Spar. Went and saw Larry Moss yesterday, and we had a talk, and I know he was for it. My concern is parking in my lot after hours. That's my main concern. And I don't want to put a big sign up at my entrance that says, "Show your away if you park in my lot," because I'm open and we have people at night in my lot. Second concern that dawned on me here real quick was I live part-time on Balboa Island. We have a neighborhood Parkway Grill there who recently had to comply with their venting of their food service in a R1 neighborhood. And you can hear that shiny stainless steel roof vent 4 blocks away. and it's a noise pollution for the neighbors. And if I lived on Downey, that would be my main concern, is the noise from that, whatever's required for the cooking. And over the years, trust me, they always serve meatball sandwiches and what have you. And you mentioned Sauer Brothers. They've been one of your biggest clients over 40 years there at night. So I hope it works out. I think you got a heck of a challenge. I hope it is what you've said, because I wouldn't be there if I have great tenants in my building that have been there so long we don't even have leases. We have handshakes. And, but my concern is parking at night. I'm not insured for your clients who come out having 1, 2, or 3 or whatever. And before, the noise was mainly with the front door open and the pool table, and and whooping it up, quite frankly. And so you had a very limited clientele, as you mentioned, and I'm hoping you have the family-oriented clientele and what have you. So I guess I'm okay with it. I just hope you don't park in my lot, and we can work that out. And the good news is my north wall, the outside seating, any of that, it really doesn't affect me. This doesn't affect me other than the parking in my lot. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I don't have any other cards with the exception of Bob Taylor, so anything else to add? Okay, I'd like to call forward then the applicant. If you have any further comments or rebuttal.
Yes, I'd like to thank everyone for coming, and Mr. McDonald, thank you so much for expressing your concerns. Crime in the area is my understanding. The reason that they say it's a high crime area is because in that area there seems to be an undue amount of retail theft, not really related to alcoholic beverages, but if you check with the police, my understanding is there is a lot of retail theft that they're constantly dealing with up in that area. This is going to be a no smoking establishment. Okay, so the patio is not going to be open for smoking, and we will of course post signage to that effect. We just hope that we can remain in contact after this. If there ever is a problem in your parking lot, we want to know about it, but we will also monitor that as well. And same with the venting, any noise pollution. We will ask building and safety what types of measures we can put in place to make sure that that's done correctly. You're right. There were a lot of, in the past, it was sort of like a little biker bar. Yep. With the jukebox, and it was loud, and the pool, billiards and the dartboard and all of that. But all of those things are gone. And I got the jukebox. So that's all I wanted to say, but thank you very much for your concerns, and we will certainly do everything we can to alleviate them. Okay. Any other questions you may have for us?
No, I don't have any.
Okay.
Is there anybody else who wishes to speak who hasn't had a chance to speak? I see people in the audience who haven't submitted a card, seeing them shaking their heads no. All right. With that, I am now closing this public hearing. This case will be taken under submission, and I'll be preparing my decision. We have no further items on the agenda, and so this meeting is now adjourned. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.